I'm not sure I agree with his comment, though, about the bond market, because I think we already know what the discretionary spending levels are going to be. That's not going to be moved much. And I'm kind of amazed by both sides of the aisle refusal to admit that we're just, if we want to actually move the needle on deficits, it's on entitlements. Nobody wants to touch it.
But in the short term, David, I can understand the argument that tax cut 2.0 goes away. And so as a result, you're not going to have that fiscal stimulus going into it. You're not going to have Treasury issuing quite as many bonds to pay for some of those things along the way. I get that.
I do, and except for I think the size we were talking about there was not necessarily needle moving anyways. Right. And I do think one of the most interesting things to markets that Larry Kudlow's talking about, Secretary Mnuchin's talking about, they can do at Treasury Department level, not with an act of Congress, and that is that inflation indexing to capital gains.
Right. Can you speak, though, both of you, to the issue that Mr. Boockvar was talking about, which is the leverage that China thinks it has or doesn't have today relative to yesterday, in terms of where this tariff and trade war go?
Yeah, I would.
That's, to me, going to be the overhang over the next couple months, one way or the other.
I would hate to think that my client capital was going to be affected by me being able to forecast how China's interpreting midterms. I'm not so sure how we're all interpreting midterms.
But they were certainly waiting for it.
But they were, and I really believe that we're in the same place we were, which is that both sides do not know what the other side's end game really is. I don't think China has any less or more leverage based on last night.
And you don't think there's new information?
Oh, no.
As a result of this. I think they were waiting for new information, either because they thought that the president was going to be...
If there was a sound rebuke of President Trump, that they would feel they had more
damaged,
leverage.
Or that they really didn't have the leverage, in which case they were going to have to actually...
No, that's a fair point, and obviously that did not happen. I don't think anyone's waking up this morning saying, wow, President Trump was really scolded. This is so far from a 2010 moment with President Obama.
And you have to buy into the whole supply chain disruption bearish story to think it's that big a deal anyway, because it's our domestic economy that's really took us right now. I mean, I don't know if China is front and center on. I wouldn't. That's not the one thing I would talk. That's not the one thing I would talk about.
The tariffs would be concerned.
But I would say Q3 GDP though.
The Democrats like the tariffs. That's what's important.
But the business investment number within Q3 GDP, I'm one of these guys who really thinks CapEx has to be high, and I believe with that explosive CapEx in Q1 and Q2 coming down to practically zero in Q3, I do believe that was tariff related.
I guess I don't want to give China as much. They're not the the wild card in our economy here. I just don't even want to admit that, but maybe it is. Anyway, Ed, that was you, barely bullish, right?
That's correct.
B-E-A-R-L-Y.
That's right.
Barely bullish.
So we still are. So we've been overweight stocks
nothing's
all year and
changed.
underweight bonds. I'm going to say nothing's changed.
Well, what did the election last night, the midterm, mean to your overall viewpoint? Has anything changed?
I don't think it's all that dramatically changed. That's a Riverhawk, the mascot of the University of Massachusetts Lowell. I got my back.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, good.
I wouldn't say nothing has changed, but I think the basics haven't changed very much at all. I think the Fed is on track to continue to raise. One of the most interesting dynamics, actually, I think might be, how does the president react to the Fed as they continue to raise rates? Does he ratchet up the pressure, as he did in his interview with you? Or does he kind of sit back and let the Fed do his thing? I wouldn't be at all surprised if he decides to run against the Fed as part of his strategy for 2020. So does that mean that the Fed will at some point pause? Probably not. But I think that's going to be a very interesting dynamic.